Styli Charalambous, Chief Executive Officer of the Daily Maverick, a very warm welcome to the Red Zone. This is what you say, that people who are playing in the digital publishing space will tell you how troubled digital advertising in South Africa is. You are a harbinger of gloom. What are you actually saying?
I'm saying essentially that we need to relook and redefine the way we do business as publishers. I think the days of publishers relying on subscription revenue and advertising are over. I think we need to look at new ways of generating revenue. And if we're stuck on relying on banner ads as digital publishers to generate those revenues, we're going to be in trouble.
Is the fault the publishers themselves who simply are not being creative enough, or is it the media planners, the media buyers who simply don't understand your medium and default to something which is safe and isn't working?
I think everyone has a bit of blame to account for in this scenario. I think publishers themselves have a history that needs to be corrected. In the early days of digital publishing, editors and publishers kind of look to IT people to look after their digital publishing. So Bob in IT was tasked with putting together a website.
That's the death knell, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is because the skills of editors and designers weren't really involved in the early days, and it was an afterthought, and in some cases still is an afterthought in broadcasters and publishers' sphere of influence. So from that, digital advertising, had some roots that were planted quite skewly. The early days would plaster as many ads as possible onto one page in efforts of driving up revenue or getting as many impressions sold. What that meant was that advertising became less effective. And as it became less effective, it meant that adverts had to become more sort of intrusive and more sort of trying to be engaging and flashing banners and driving across your screen, and that made it even less effective. So it was kind of a spiral that was created by a number of different players.
Right. Having said that, though, again, I'm going to play devil's advocate and be on the role of the media planner or the buyer. They will look at the offering and they say, well, first of all, real figures are hard to come by. Demonstrate to me that people are actually going to the site. Many sites can't do that.
Yeah, that's true, and I think
and that's your fault.
Yeah, that's our fault, and I think it's something that us as an industry are trying to correct that. So in South Africa, we have the Digital Media and Marketing Association, which have strive to pull us together and create one independent third-party source of information that media planners can then use. The challenge that we have there with that is that the measurement tools aren't really as effective as they could be. In some cases, we're measuring the basics, and there's this big focus about numbers in that you need to have the most number of visitors per month in order to be effective, or the allure of the most number of visitors. And digital publishing and advertising is really, the focus is all about the numbers. So our gripe with that is that we need to bring in a measure of quality. Where is that measure of quality? It can't all be about numbers.
But ultimately, a plan is based on numbers, because that's what a brand manager wants to see.
Sure, that's true.
You can't measure quality.
Well, that's the challenge.
How do you overcome that? What needs to change?
Well, it's an education process. It's really about collecting more data. It's about knowing your audience, about being able to demonstrate the kind of people that are reading your publication. We use the example of a Vanity Fair, for example. Sure. It might not have the most number of readers in the world, but there's a certain quality of reader that you're going to be,
and a quality of content.
And quality of content.
So surely, the better the quality of the content, the media planners ultimately are going to migrate there anyway. And in your case with the Daily Maverick, you've demonstrated that, haven't you? Is that people are going to you because the content is readable, because you're setting an agenda.
Yes, that's true, and we do like to, and that's how we position it, as being able to reach people that are high LSM, people that are decision makers, and people of influence. But it still is challenging, because you have all these data sets in front of you as a media planner, and the problem is that the quality of your audience doesn't always come through when there's this big focus on the total number of readers that your site has.
There's a David and Goliath battle happening as well. A recent article that you wrote, you talk about the saboteurs, the major players in the traditional publishing and advertising space, and it hasn't been in the big publishers and agencies' interests, you claim, to curate and develop digital properties. Sour grapes, or are you being trodden on by the big traditional media houses?
The South African digital market, digital advertising market, and even on the publisher side, is way behind the rest of the world, in the developed world. Our percentage share of what gets allocated to digital ad spend in South Africa is a fraction of what it is overseas. So we need to look at the reasons for that. And I mean, obviously, internet penetration in the early days of South African rollout was quite poor, but that's no longer the case. You know, where there's 22 million unique browsers that accessed South African publishers last month alone, which was a significant number. So we need to look at the other factors that could be causing it. And in my mind, it's quite clear. It's because the business model hasn't been there. It's because the economics of digital advertising and digital publishing haven't been there. So it hasn't been in the interest of a lot of those players to go out and develop those properties.
Now there's a big default, it would seem, to paywalls. You're a big fan of paywalls, aren't you?
Absolutely not, Jeremy. There are a number of reasons why we aren't. Number one, and first and foremost, is we don't have a print arm or print legacy to try and protect. And that seems to be the biggest reason and rationale behind putting up paywalls. Some publishers will tell you that the justification is that you used to pay for our content in print, so now you should be paying for that in online, which actually isn't an argument that has any justification from our point of view, because no publisher ever made money out of the subscription revenue they collected or the cover price. That all went towards covering costs of print, distribution, logistics, and there was never any profit that was made out of that. So to say that you're paying for content is a bit of a misnomer, because you're actually paying for the print and distribution. And then for us, it's kind of counterintuitive. As I said, so that the South African digital publishing sector has a lot of catch-up to do. So we're in a growth phase. We need to catch up to our more developed partners, and in order to do that, we need to make it as accessible as possible. And for us, it's counterintuitive to go and put content behind a paywall, because that stops that growth. And if we've got a lot of catching up to do, paywalls aren't going to be the method that's going to help us get there.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.